Hello and welcome to the AuthorAlly podcast. I am your host, Jon Writer, author of the suspenseful thriller Forest Hill Falls, now available on paperback and hardcover through Amazon, and ebook through Apple Books and Google Books. If you haven't already, go ahead and join our subreddit, AuthorAlly, for the latest on new books, stories, and incredible authors. If you would like to support the podcast and channel, consider giving a donation to help keep us moving forward by going to paypal.me/AuthorAlly or searching for JQ Publishing on Venmo. But enough about me, the channel, or our subreddit. Today we have our guest, Alex Williams from New Jersey, author of For Love and Affection. And I'm excited to know more about their book. So let's get started. How are you doing today, Alex?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. I appreciate you asking. So you have this book to promote. Tell us about it. I'm very intrigued.
It's it was a bit of a passion project. It was a birthday present for my dad. He gave me the idea for it about 20 years or so ago. It's been kind of bumping around in my head for a while. And I was finally able to take the time off to do it, and I surprised him with it on his birthday.
That's an amazing birthday gift. Most people give flowers, a birthday card. You actually gave somebody a book. That's great. So how did the idea kind of form? I know you said your dad gave you the idea, like were you watching movies and something clicked and you thought, oh, that would be great? Or did he think that? Or like, how did that kind of come up?
So it came up because my dad had either read something or heard somewhere that as long as you specifically name someone and leave them what we believe is the legal minimum of $1 in your will, they can't contest it. So they can't turn around and say, oh, you forgot me. I deserve, X dollars or whatever from your estate. So the thought process behind that was you're getting $1 for your love and affection shown to the person leaving the money at the end of their life. So he had given me that idea, and just it kind of sat in my brain for about 20 years, waiting for the right time and the right characters.
I love that. That's really, really interesting because I think not a lot of people know that. So making a passion project like that, like there's so much that I think the reader can learn from that. So then when you write a book like that, like what's the message that you're trying to convey without revealing any spoilers or the ending or anything like that?
For me, it was kind of exploring the thing that I struggle with the most, which is learning to lean on other people emotionally, whether they're your biological family, whether they're your found family, best friend, a significant other, coworkers, whatever. Having the strength to say, I can't do this alone. I need somebody else. I need another input. I need help. And so that was kind of where this all came about.
Yeah, and I struggle with the same exact thing. Like part of the biggest struggle for me has always been to just say, you said it right over the head, I need help. I would rather just get stabbed by a million swords than to ask for help. And growing up, that's something I had to learn to say, hey, I need assistance with this. Can you do this for me? This would lighten my load. So I think that's a really important message to learn is to say, reach out for assistance when you need it. That is super huge. So I'm curious then when you say that, so writing that all down had to have been tough. What was that process like for you, conveying that message and keeping that relevant throughout the book?
It was extremely emotional because while I was writing it, I was also keeping it a secret from my parents, which is very difficult because I am super close with both of them. Obviously, I mean, I wrote my dad a book, but I'm very close with both my parents. And so to kind of take them out of that equation of the emotional support was pretty difficult. But the girl who edited my book with me kind of took over that role. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I would text her at 2:00 in the morning or call her crying because I wasn't sure what to do. I did the same thing to my husband. Poor guy works from home 2 days a week and was constantly getting me knocking on his door. but it was very emotional. It took a lot of paper towels and tissues to write. One chapter in particular took me quite literally 3 days to write because I was crying so hard I couldn't see the screen.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that's incredible that you were able to do that. And there must have been a little part of you on the inside just screaming out loud because you wanted to probably speak to your parents about it, but you couldn't, right?
Yeah, it was really hard. My mom and I talk literally every day. I see them usually once a week at least. So hiding that from them was really, really hard. Um, After we kind of got over the excited emotional opening of the book, my mom just kept saying, I can't believe you lied to me for so long. But it was really hard to do because we were so close.
Did you have a favorite chapter in the book that one stuck out the most?
Probably the one that took me the 3 days to write. And actually the two that happened after it, because there was the emotional catharsis of the one that took me the 3 days. And then there's a big emotional confrontation where the main character finds her spine and finally gets to say the words that she's always wanted to say, kind of her mic drop moment. And then she walks away and just, like cool guys never look at the explosion kind of thing. She just walks away and doesn't care what happens afterwards. And that's a huge moment to know when to just walk away.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you talk about character growth. Holy smokes, dropping the mic and
Yeah.
walking away. That's incredible. That's great. I love that you have a particular moment in your book that just sticks out. I know that with lots of authors, they usually take elements and themes in their own personal lives and incorporate it into the book. I'm curious if you did that, and I was curious to know a little bit more about the characters that you made. Who are they, and what do they do?
So there are a lot of family Easter eggs. The two main older adults in the book are variations of my parents' names. So I didn't want to specifically write them exactly, but they both have a lot of my favorite elements of my parents. The fact that they emotionally adopt the main character of the story because they are her best friend's parents, which my parents have done for my friends. I grew up as an only child, but I have probably half a dozen siblings simply through my parents emotionally adopting them. There's a dog in it that once I realized that this dog was necessary, the only name available was my dad's childhood dog. So seeing him find that Easter egg and seeing the look on his face when he realized why this dog was named the way it was absolutely beautiful. I I've incorporated a lot of my friends. The girl that did the editing for me, she was a huge influence on one of the characters. Obviously, a bit of the main character is a bit of me, just because you write what you know. And originally, this was just a story for him. This was almost practice. Um, and it wasn't until I was most of the way through it that I thought, I actually did this. Maybe other people would want to read it. I had a couple of people read a few chapters here and there just to make sure that they made sense. And they're like, well, where's the rest of it? So it kind of became something more than just a birthday present. And I wanted to publish it and just see what happened and see if maybe I could make this work.
Kudos to you. That is spectacular. Like, I can't even believe it. Like, the fact that your contribution to the world and just writing that, I know you gave it for your parent. Like, that's the look on their face must have been priceless. You truly gave them a priceless gift. But I think, the elements like the family dynamic is huge for people. A lot of the books that I read and my wife reads, she loves the family dynamic and to see how other families are functioning and what kind of trials and tribulations they go through. And then we like to relate it to our life. And yeah, that sounds like, Peter or whoever. So that's really, it sounds like an emotionally charged book. And one that's like, just has so much feeling in it. And it's just, I'm sure it's beautifully written based on how you're explaining it. So I can't wait to dive deeper into it. Did you find yourself like writing and having writer's block, and just like, how did you deal with that? Because I would imagine that if I had to write about my family, there's things I'd keep running into a wall. Maybe I wouldn't want to include certain things. And I'm just curious as to how you deal with that as an author. That way, hopefully other authors can learn from what you've done, your successes in regards to that.
So I did have a bit of writer's block. I'm part of a lot of writers communities, both on Reddit, Facebook, Threads now. And for me, because I know that there's kind of like those two main types of authors, where you have your plotters, and then you have your pantsters, where they kind of fly by the seat of their pants. And I found that what works for me is kind of a mix of both. I plot until I feel confident that I have a decent enough roadmap, and then I kind of just start, because I need some wiggle room, because you don't want to plot until you're sick of the story.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to want to read it. You're never going to write it because you're already sick of it. You're already sick of your characters. But I started with characters. Names were super important. Some names were just kind of pulled out of the air as I was writing. But the main character, so the main female character, her best friend's parents, and then also the grandparents who were part of the story, they were all meaningful in some way. And then, because the main character's name is actually the name my dad wanted to give me before I was born, but my mom said no, because it just didn't work with our last name. And so thankfully she kind of got her way with that one, because it just would not have worked. And he admitted it years later, like he was fine with it, but I kind of put that in there as a little Easter egg of, you finally got your name that you had wanted. Sorry, it's not your actual daughter, but in a way it kind of is. But yeah, I as far as writer's block, I would walk away. I had to. There were times that I would just have to walk away, because you sit there and you stare at a blank screen for more than 45 minutes, and you start to get these thoughts, or at least I did, of, what am I doing? Who said I could do this? Why did I think I could do this? I can't do this. Nobody's going to read this. It's all crap. And so I would just get up and go do something else. I would go do the dishes, or I would go do laundry, or, just stand in my living room and scream if I was home alone. I would, if my husband was home, sometimes I would knock on his office door and just kind of word vomit at him ideas that I was having, because I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do next. And sometimes he would give me ideas, sometimes my friends would give me ideas, but I needed that that sounding board. I needed somebody to be there, because you can only kind of yell at your own walls long enough.
Yeah.
And I kind of refused to get like a rubber duck and talk to the rubber duck. I know like coders do that. That I was like, you know what? If we go down that rabbit hole, we're not coming out of it. So I needed human interaction, and sometimes you just have to walk away. That was the biggest thing, was just walk away, don't think about it, and an idea will come. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but at least my dishes were done.
Yeah, at least you got things done around the house. That's a great way. That's a wonderful outlook, honestly. I think that walking away and doing something else is probably the best thing you can do. There was someone who submitted in, and they're going to be doing an interview soon, but they mentioned that they just jumped to writing something else, and they come up with ideas as they're writing something else. And then they go back, and I'm like, where do you get a break? That seems like a lot of writing. But to each their own. Everyone's got their own thing. For myself, I can't tell you how many times I screamed at the wall, like, I don't know what to do now, or I'd like find myself into a loop, and then I got to dig out a hole, basically, dig myself out of a hole. So, yeah, I mean, that's great that you were able to sort of find different ways to channel, like, I guess, to unclog the creative block that you had, and then you would come back to it once you wanted to write everything down. I'm curious about your book's location. Like, where does that actually take place? Is it in a fictional like world where it's a different land and there's different things going on, or is it like in a particular part of the country, the map, or anything like that?
I didn't want to go too far out of what I know. I grew up outside of Philadelphia. This the book takes place in Philadelphia or in the suburbs of it. So I kind of in my head had like my own neighborhood in my brain while I was writing it.
Sure, yeah.
The one part of the family lives out in California. I wanted that physical separation between the two groups. And I figured, well, California is literally on the other side of the world from me, from my little section of Pennsylvania / New Jersey. And the setting of it really doesn't necessarily add or subtract anything from the story. I think really the only thing it does is the fact that it's cold here in like September, October, cold and kind of rainy some days, but otherwise the setting wasn't really a huge deal. I just figured I'll write what I kind of know, because I don't really get into the city very often. I try not to.
Sure, yeah. And I know with some books, locations, everything. I like what you said. Go with what you know. I think that's a really smart way of doing things. Sometimes, when I speak to other authors, they're like, well, I don't want to exactly say like my street or my hometown. So it's written on that location, but they changed the wording a little bit. So I was just curious as to what your book was like. I am curious though, when it came to actually making your book, from writing to publishing, was there one side or the other that you enjoyed more than the other? I guess, if that makes sense. Like, did you like writing the story more, or did you like publishing it? Take me through that process.
It was so much easier, and looking back on that, saying easier is crazy. It was so much easier to write it than it was to actually publish it. I did set it to publish on Kindle on my birthday. That was my birthday present to myself. Turning 35 was a weird thing. Because I've been telling everybody that I've been 29 plus whatever for how long, and that was my birthday present to myself, was publishing it, but trying to format it because I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I have no clue. I will say that I did get to have a video chat with one of my absolute favorite authors. Her book is actually literally right there behind me. And she told me about this program called Atticus. And as an early birthday present, my husband bought it for me. And
Oh.
I cried, one, because it was a sweet thing to do, and then again because it was so stupidly easy to do and to use. And I have been smacking my head against my desk trying to get Scrivener to work for me to make this thing into an ebook, and it was just, I don't know what I'm doing. I couldn't follow the YouTube tutorials. They were great, but there was just a weird it was entirely user error. And so finally being able to do that, it was so much easier. And she walked me through how to actually publish it on Kindle, which was incredible and kind of insane to watch and to see, like, you're an author that people actually know your name. I went to a book signing and I met you.
That's
and
amazing.
you are walking me through this process. So I am forever grateful to the absolutely incredible Maria Lewis. And it was very easy to do, but emotionally publishing it and putting it out there was honestly the harder part, because you're putting a piece of your soul out there to other people to look at, to comment on, and it's really hard. It's really vulnerable and scary to turn around and say, here is a piece of my soul, please be nice. But also
Yeah.
be honest though, like, you want feedback, but don't be a jerk about it.
Right.
And at the moment, I don't really have the funds to advertise it. So the majority of my
Sure.
sales have been people that I know. I believe I had one pre-order, and that was my husband, which he didn't tell me until the day that it downloaded. Like, by the way,
Shout outs to your husband. He
right.
seems like a great guy.
He absolutely is. He's been my biggest cheerleader through this. I lost my job last April, and that's when I decided to try to actually give this a shot, because he said, look, we're fine. I've got a good job. This has been your dream since you were 7. Give it a shot. we'll give it a year, see what happens. And I sitting down to write it was about the first week or so of June, and it was done by August.
I love that. Good for you. Give yourself a big pat on the back. I mean, there's a very, very small portion of people that actually publish books. And you did it. That's amazing. It's a huge accomplishment. I am so proud for you. Just hearing, your voice and you telling the stories that you just told me, like, I know you've come a long way, and that's just amazing to see. So thank you for your contribution to the world in publishing this book. I can't wait to read it. I know I'm going to be talking all about it, and I'll certainly promote it on my end. So definitely thank you on that. Was this your first book published or second, or are you, tell me about that. First book. Wow. So this must have really been tough.
It was really, really hard. Because like I said, this was almost practice in a way.
Sure.
And kind of going through the depression of no longer having a job and the self-doubts of writing and putting yourself out there and putting yourself into a career where, unless you're Stephen King, J.K. Rowling,
Right.
all these guys that make thousands, millions of dollars, whatever, like you're kind of throwing yourself out onto a tightrope with no safety net. And I am lucky that I do have the safety net of my husband and my family and my friends, but it's so hard. But this was kind of practice just to see if I could do it, because there weren't really any stakes, because I didn't tell my parents that I was doing it. If I didn't give it to him for his birthday, he didn't know that I was working on it. He had no idea. So that pressure was kind of taken off. And then there was also my internal thought of, if I've only got one in me, it has to be this one. It has to be the one that my dad gave me the idea for 20 some years ago. And he'll bring it up every once in a while, like, oh, hey, don't forget you have that title. And for it to kind of just be a practice one, with very little in the way of outside pressure, was huge. It did not make it easy. I'm never going to say that this was easy, because it wasn't. It was probably one of the hardest things I have ever done in my entire life, and I want to do it again. I've already started. It becomes addicting. The feeling of being able to take a situation that, the situation in my book, it's not outside the realm of normal. I mean, the amount of money that's in the will is more than most people would have, but you can shrink that. You can still relate to it, even if it's $100 in a will, and you have to split that with people, or you have to then disperse that to the right person. It's something that I think everybody can relate to, is losing a loved one, learning to rely on the people that mean the most to you, and cutting off the people that don't.
Yep. That's huge. That's a big part of life. And it's in some situations can be very hard to do. So yeah, and I think that's something that many people go through, or will have to go through at some point. So I love that idea. I'm so intrigued. I can't wait to get to the end. And on one note, I know you mentioned how tough it was and everything you went through to make the first book, but is there a little part of you that says, okay, now I kind of know what I'm doing. I can't wait for book number 2?
Yeah. I gave myself a little bit of time off, because I had expended so much mental and emotional energy, and physical, because I've was fidgeting constantly. I was typing my fingers off. I gave myself a little bit of time off, but in the back of my head, it was always kind of there of, what do I want to do next? Like, this is not going to be a series. There's not going to be any more of these specific characters. So I have to find something else. But I loved this idea of family drama, of interpersonal connections, of just real life things where the good guys always win, kind of thing. Like, life doesn't always have that kind of ending. So letting the underdog win is going to be a theme in anything I write. But I can't wait to do it again. I'm
I
plotting.
love that.
I'm giving myself another couple of days to do it, and I have decided to challenge myself because I'm insane to write 100,000 words in 100 days.
Wow, that's a huge challenge. Good for
Oh,
you. That's great.
we'll see if I
Has
make it, but that's my plan.
You seem pretty resilient. I think that you can do it. I
Hopefully.
well, when you write your second book, I hope that you join us again. Can you give us a little bit of idea of what it's about, or are we waiting on that?
No, it will be another family drama. This it does also kind of deal with an inheritance, but in a different way. It's a bunch of different family members, so aunts, uncles, cousins, siblings, trying to decide what to do with the family home once the last owner passes. So
Oh,
there's nobody that's specifically next in line for it. Now, what do we do? It's a huge part of the town's makeup. It's a huge part of our family makeup. Obviously, none of this is autobiographical at all.
yeah.
But it's they have to figure out what to do with it. And learning things about family that you don't know, that you grew up with this misconception, or you know this one situation took on a life of its own, and nobody really knows what's going on. I think that's something that a lot of families and people can relate to, is as you grow up, you learn things about your family members that you had no idea
Oh
happened,
yeah.
especially people that have passed. And so they'll be going through this big house and finding all the skeletons in the closet and figuring out what to do with it. Because it's not just their family that will be affected, it's the entire town. So it'll be fun, hopefully.
That 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 sounds like that could be a great show. When you were explaining that, I was seeing that in my head on maybe Apple TV or something. Have you ever thought about maybe pitching something to be a show, or maybe some kind of screenplay?
Maybe
Because that sounds
I
like a great plot.
have, I have thought about trying to go for like a traditional publishing deal. Um, who knows? I did kind of like being able to self-publish and having
Yeah.
um, being the one to click the button that says "Go ahead and publish this" was pretty powerful. Also very nerve-wracking. I actually spent my entire birthday away from home just so that I would not keep checking my computer, and, and check the back end of my Amazon store. But yeah, it's currently only available on ebook, but I do plan to get it up there for paperback and hardback at some point.
That's great. Well, if you get around to that, I will definitely get a hard copy myself. I will keep tabs on it because I love hardback. I do like ebooks. I just prefer the actual paper, but I will definitely own both versions either way. Any last words or advice that you can maybe give to any other authors out there thinking about self-publishing? Yeah,
Don't
any last words?
don't do too much research. I think that is what kind of leads you down the bad rabbit holes of I can't do this, or oh, somebody else has already written this. Okay, tropes are a trope for a reason. People love them. It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to write your own story the same way you will. So there's a place for it. But doing too much research for me kind of bogged everything down, and you no longer really care. Just let yourself write it, have fun, and maybe stock up on better tissues because paper towels hurt when you cry.
Alex, that's amazing advice. Thank you so much. I definitely look forward to having you again. I can't wait for this podcast to drop. And we'll definitely put a link to purchase your book in the description. So I appreciate all of your time today. And we look forward to seeing you again on Author Ally.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.